These are 10 of the biggest mistakes that your league mates are going to make, but you don't want to make yourselves. Let's kick it off, Danny, with the first mistake, which is drafting multiple quarterbacks and tight ends if you've already drafted an elite option. A good rule of thumb for those of you guys drafting your fantasy football teams, if you selected a top 3 to 5 tight end, aka like TJ Hawkinson and better at tight end, a top 8 quarterback, aka Bo Nix or better in quarterback ADP, you probably don't want to be drafting 9th round Dak Prescott to go along with your 5th round Joe Burrow. And this is even more applicable in shallower leagues, 8 and 10 man leagues. And the reason why we want to be doing this is because when you take an early round tight end, when you take an early round quarterback, you are inherently making the bet that that player will hit big for you at those onesie positions, assuming you're not in a super flex or a tight end premium. If they don't, your default is to stream the waiver wire, stream until you can trade for a better option. And let's be honest here. Let's say you take Brock Bowers in the 2nd round and he's not a positional advantage. You probably have an uphill battle of winning your league anyways.
There's no point on ensuring your top tight end selected, because if he doesn't hit, then you're probably going to be losing regardless. So, I mean, you can even apply it to the quarterback position. Let's just say you draft a Jalen Hurts in round 4, a Joe Burrow in round 5. Like, why wrap back around and take a Justin Fields, a Dak Prescott, somebody like that for specifically a bye week? Your whole goal should be, okay, this guy's going to be a positional advantage for me throughout the year. And when his bye week comes, I will figure out a streaming option. Even if you have to start a Bryce Young for a week, a Sam Darnold for a week, because that's all that's available. It's better than allocating that extra bench spot to a position that you've already figured out. The only way I'm rostering 2 tight ends or 2 quarterbacks is that I've spent a low enough opportunity cost on the position where I have the luxury of having another bench option, where I have the luxury of having another dart throw to try to build that positional edge. The whole point on taking 2 quarterbacks, or the whole point on taking 2 tight ends, is that the opportunity cost combined for them matches about what it would have costed to draft a mid-round option, except now you have the upside where if Colson Loveland does become the next Brock Bowers, or Tyler Warren becomes the next Brock Bowers, you don't really have to worry about it as much because you have the security in the early season for, let's just say, your Mark Andrews type that you picked as well.
Yeah, the goal is to get an every week starter, essentially. And if you need to take 2 13th and 15th round shots on Trevor Lawrence and Michael Penix because you feel like you can get an every week starting quarterback based on whoever hits for you, then great. But if you take a 3rd round quarterback or you take a 5th round tight end, that's your dude. That's the guy that you're riding with. Otherwise, don't pick him and draft 2 super late round options or draft a mid round option with another late round option. The best approach essentially is that you only draft quarterbacks and tight ends early that you believe in, and you feel confident that they will be set it and forget it starters. If they aren't, you'll figure that out when the time comes. Waivers, trades, bench players, you have options to figure that out. If you take 8th round Colson Loveland and he's unstartable for the first 4 weeks, well, then you work the waiver wire until he is startable. So that's basically the main mistake we want you guys to avoid. Don't plan that your early round quarterback and tight end aren't going to work out for you. And especially do not draft a 2nd quarterback holding them all season for a bye week.
Well, Loveland specifically, I will say, I would say Hawkinson up to your case. Loveland specifically, if you did want to draft one in the round 12, 13 range, I think that's reasonable because you're probably getting Colson Loveland at a discount in your draft. You're probably getting him 9th, 10th round. It's not like you're spending that 6th, 7th round or higher draft capital. That's the only thing that we want to say. If you're spending a pick in the first 6 or 7 rounds, don't handcuff yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So mistake number 2 that you want to let your buffoon league mates make and you don't want to make yourself is poor bench construction. I'm going to say this very clear. There is no penalty, 0, for missing on late round picks and redraft.
Agreed.
Why? Because you can churn the waiver wire like every smart fantasy player does. If you draft in rounds 9 to 15, 2 good players, that's a great hit rate in rounds 9 to 15. And you can churn the waiver wire, get the guys that didn't hit for you. Like I drafted Miles Sanders in the Flock League. Miles Sanders might be a 0 in the first 2 weeks. I can drop him and churn the waiver wire. On your bench, especially if you are in an 8-man league, a 10-man league, a 12-man league with shallow roster settings or shallow bench spots, your bench needs to be lined purely with upside. When you're in deeper leagues, okay, Christian Kirk, Rashad Bateman, those type of guys are going to matter more. But in shallow, everyday run-of-the-mill leagues that most of you guys are playing in, you want your bench lined with upside.
Exactly, because the whole point, you are drafting your bench to eventually be able to play over your starters, especially in shallower leagues. Like you said, in deeper leagues, it's good to have that adequate depth. For me personally, when I'm in a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex setup, I'm in a 2 wide receiver, 2 flex setup, your upside on your bench has to be the reason why you're drafting them. Luther Burden types, handcuff backfields. Realistically, the upside is going to come from those rookie running backs, those rookie wide receivers, those ambiguous backfields like we mentioned, your Tank Bigsby types, your Dylan Sampson types, young wide receivers. Maybe you're in on Keon Coleman this year. You're not expecting him to be a starter for you right away, but if you believe in the Bills offense, you believe in Coleman, he's like your upside wide receiver to have stashed. Realistically, like I said, instead of spending that extra bench spot because you drafted Jalen Hurts, now I got to grab Michael Penix in round 13. If Jalen Hurts is going to be in your lineup 90+% of the time this year, instead take that shot on a running back who, for example, Dylan Sampson in the Flock League. If Quinshon Judkins doesn't play week 1, that Dylan Sampson pick becomes a huge value where I got him.
And again, if Jalen Hurts doesn't make any sense and he doesn't work for your lineup, then you probably weren't going to win your league anyway. Exactly. And another part of this that I quickly want to mention too is also line your bench with upside at the position you're weakest at. Exactly. Like if you took 2 straight running backs to start your draft and another running back in round 5, well, then maybe you line your bench with rookie wide receiver help because your wide receiver core is weaker, and vice versa. You drafted 3 straight wide receivers to start your draft and then 2 more in round 6 and 7. Then maybe you just line your bench with upside at running back.
So that was the original thesis of Zero RB, where in this range, the 10, the 11, the 12, the 13 range, a lot of these running backs in ambiguous situations or clear handcuffs are usually the best league winners out of this range every year. So the whole basis initially for Zero RB is while the whole position is pushed up the board, you take the elite wide receiver talent, because once you get round 10, round 11, round 12, the backup running back that lucks his way into 20 touches come week 3 is going to be the best value pick in this range.
Yeah, absolutely. Tip number 3 is a pretty straightforward one, but people will forget it anyways. Don't get drunk at your draft. Don't get drunk. Don't get high. Don't get distracted in any way. If you want to, have a good time with your fantasy draft, at least wait until the money rounds are over. It impairs your judgment scientifically. You want to watch a car crash in slow motion? Go watch me kind of half in the bag draft Garrett Wilson over Justin Jefferson last year. It's Garrett Wilson time in the Flock League. The reason I didn't crack a single drink until the 8th round of our Flock League draft this season is because I wanted to be of sound mind when I was making my selections.
When you're a newer player especially, I think this is imperative. As you get more experience, the one caveat I do have is some people actually feel less anxiety once they have some drinks in them. They're flowing, they get the communication going. I'm the type of person where I kind of actually need a couple drinks in. And the other thing, maybe you don't want to do it during your draft, but absolutely at the post-draft meetup when the fans are all around, that's when you should get the drinks in and start some conversations for trades.
Yeah, and honestly, better yet, feed your league mates drinks so they make bad decisions.
Mason tried to, by the way. He hired a bartender for us.
Yeah, Mason got a bartender for us at the Flock League draft trying to feed us drinks, and all of us were like, screw that shit, dude. I'm not trying to be drunk during this thing. I care about this league. So tip number 4, to let your buffoon league mates make. And my league mates are very guilty of this. And I know for a fact a lot of your league mates are probably guilty of this as well. Mock drafting exclusively on the platform you're playing on. So if you're playing on Sleeper, all you're doing is your draft slot, you pick 9, and all you're doing is mock drafts from pick 9 on Sleeper only.
You become way too comfortable with the player valuation strictly on that app. If you're mock drafting exclusively on Sleeper, ESPN, Yahoo, NFL, whatever platform you guys are playing out there to get ready for your drafts, if that's all you're drafting on, there's a good chance that you're going to like your teams better in those mocks than the actual team that you get. You have to be prepared to adjust. For example, if you're on the Sleeper app right now and every single draft, you could get a Mecca Buka in the 10th round. Try doing a draft on Flock. Try doing a draft on Underdog. You'll notice that, oh, shoot, in these other platforms, Emeka Egbuka now starts going off the board round 5, round 6, round 7. So if I'm drafting on Sleeper and everybody I know around me is used to getting Egbuka in the 10th, maybe instead I take him in the 7th. Maybe I said I take him in that early 8th just to ensure he is on my team. Because like you said, people are going to have your guys. If you're solely comfortable mock drafting from your platform's ADP, you're going to miss on some valuations that you tend to like.
Yeah, it's best to assume that your league mates know what they're doing. And that might not be true. There's probably 3 or 4 league mates you can think of off the top of your head that don't know what they're doing. And they're probably the buffoons we're referring to. But if you practice for the worst case scenario, for example, I'm picking at 9, I'm trying to figure out who my 9th overall player is in my rankings as a result, because worst case scenario, I want to know who I'm picking. I'm not preparing for CeeDee Lamb to fall to me at 9, even though if it does happen, I would be ecstatic and I'd probably shit my pants excited. But I'm not preparing for that scenario. If it happens during the actual draft, I'll just be excited if it happens.
Well, that's why if you guys have seen us sometimes for videos, like we'll jerry rig the board just to give you guys a proper, adequate look of what you can expect. Because if you're only doing mock drafts and there's wild things happening, like you said, CD Lamb's fallen to 9, or maybe you're at the 5th pick and Jamar Chase has fallen there a couple times. Like if you get yourself used to that, it could only make you more disappointed on draft day if it doesn't happen.
Yeah, and the best way not to make this mistake, you made reference to it. Do mock drafts on flockfantasy.com. We have a mock draft simulator. It is free to use. You sign up using the promo code FSE. You don't need a subscription to use it. You get to use the expert rankings in there. If you have a subscription, you can obviously use my rankings or Danny's rankings, Mason's rankings, Domain's rankings, Land's rankings, and you are drafting essentially against all of our expert rankings. And you're going to see what a sharp ADP draft looks like when Emeka Egbuka's off the board at the 601 and you don't get him in the 1007 like you've been getting him when you do mock drafts. And of course, you can do best ball drafts over on Underdog. Those are paid contests. Even if it's just a $3 Pomeranian draft or a $5 puppy draft, people will take it seriously, and you cannot build God squads like you've been building in your ESPN mock draft lobbies. Do learn what the ADP is on your own platform. Like, it's important to do mock drafts on your own platform because you know inherently, hey, maybe this guy doesn't go as high on this platform as he does on other platforms, but it is best to practice the worst case scenario against better ADPs that of people who know where players are going in sharper formats.
For sure. But moving on to tip number 5, it's not correlating your bets. And there are 2 ways to correlate your bets in fantasy. The first way, stacking. Pretty simple. If you draft CeeDee Lamb in the first round because you believe in him this year, well, if CeeDee Lamb does do well, it tends to mean that Dak Prescott's probably having a big time year. So you're good if you're in the 9th round, 10th round, you have CeeDee Lamb to stack him up with Dak Prescott. For example, if you draft Trey McBride in the 3rd round this year, maybe you want to get Kyler. If you draft a Travis Hunter this year, maybe you have Trevor Lawrence in mind on a late round quarterback type of build. Realistically, if you take a stance on a player early in your drafts, correlating them with this quarterback will make you right twice.
Yeah, in 2022, this is an outdated example. I apologize for that, but the stacking tool on RotoViz is kind of down right now. If you stacked in 2022 AJ Brown with Jalen Hurts, it increased your win rate from 16.3% from just having AJ Brown to 25% from having AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts. And you had an 80% chance of finishing top 6, aka making the playoffs. So you add in one more great pick to go along with AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts. For example, George Kittle was a top 3 tight end in fantasy that year. Boom, you're up to a 60% win rate and 100% chance of making the playoffs just by consolidating your bets, correlating your bets a little bit. If you take CeeDee Lamb, you need Dak Prescott to do well as well. Same with AJ Brown, same with Jalen Hurts. Like, any stacking option is the best way and the easiest way to correlate your bets. The second way of correlating your bets is to make yourself right twice, which is tip number 6. Let's say you have a take this year. For example, you're fading Christian McCaffrey. You don't want anything to do with him. You don't want Christian McCaffrey. You're picking at 109, 110, 111 where he would normally go. And instead of taking Christian McCaffrey, you take Malik Neighbors. If you're right, you will reap the benefits of that decision because Malik Neighbors will be great and Christian McCaffrey maybe was not great. But how about making yourself right twice and you draft Brian Robinson late as well?
Yeah, and you can apply this to any type of handcuff running back. But basically the whole premise here is you're now right for both passing on him and also right for drafting the backup. And another example, let's just say you think Emeka Egbuka is undervalued. You want to have him on 100% of your redraft teams this year. If you don't want to overly invest yourself into the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense, that can impact your decision in round 3. Instead of maybe leaning towards a Mike Evans, even if you like him in relation to some of the other players, if you know that Emeka Egbuka is your number 1 value on the board, maybe that leans you to a tiebreak. Maybe instead of Mike Evans, you take a Devontae Adams, or you take a Tedero McMillan there, or maybe you like Garrett Wilson. Like, there's a few wide receivers in that range, but if you know Emeka Egbuka will be your guy later on, that maybe fades you off of taking Mike Evans earlier.
Yeah. So again, make yourself right twice and correlate your bets. Those are the 2 ways of doing it. And it is something that pays off. Like, you think about what you can do when you just simply are right on one thing, fading Christian McCaffrey, that can make you a lot better off and have a chance to win your league as a result. So tip number 7, that your Buffoon league mates, and I promise you this one will get the most pushback in the comment section because there are passionate folks about this thing. Drafting your own handcuff. Now, this is a philosophical thing that you and I disagree with. There's people out there who can make very valid arguments about it, and I can understand and recognize that there are people out there that absolutely love drafting their handcuffs. But why I don't draft my own handcuff, why we don't draft our own handcuffs is, number 1, we don't always know who the handcuff is. What if in San Francisco this year, Christian McCaffrey goes down and B-Rob, Garendo, and Jordan James are all in a committee? That happens all the time. So that's partially why I don't love drafting my own handcuff, is because you're not always going to be right. But let's say you're very confident you know who the handcuff is. Tyler Algier to Bijan Robinson, Zach Charbonnet to Kenneth Walker. It's like a foregone conclusion pretty much that if those other guys go down, that those guys are going to be great and probably win people leagues. In a 12-man fantasy league, you have an 8.3% chance of winning, 1 divided by 12. If you take Bijan Robinson, second, third, fourth overall, and he goes down for significant time, you're probably going to lose your league anyways. So drafting Tyler Algier to make sure you come in 5th or something like that is probably not the wisest decision.
Yeah, and I understand in certain instances when it's such a low opportunity cost and you have a deep bench, like I would understand the validation there. But like you said, it's much more prudent to just simply draft someone else's handcuff. Like say you passed on Bijan for Gibbs last year and you drafted Algier late in your draft to make yourself right twice. Because guess what? If Bijan misses any time, instead of having to worry about your first round pick missing time and securing the backfield with his backup, now you have Jahmyr Gibbs and Tyler Algier in your lineup. That can apply, for example, if you're worried about Kenneth Walker's health this year and you prefer to take Trevion Henderson in the late third. It goes back to what we were saying earlier. If you're worried about Kenneth Walker, take Zach Charbonnet later, because guess what? Instead of having to say, oh, I got the security of the backfield when Walker's out, now you just profit an RB1 for how many weeks? And Corey, you can attest to this. How many weeks did Zach Charbonnet hit your lineup last year?
He hit my lineup 4 times, and he was a 19-point per game running back when he hit my lineup. And last year is a perfect example for what it's worth of why some people would say that drafting your own handcuff is good. Because if you had Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker last year, you had 16.2 PPR points per game from Kenneth Walker, and you had 19.2 PPR points per game when he was out with Zach Charbonnet. So if you had both of them, you did know exactly who to start, and it was a great high-end RB1 basically for you. But that is a very rare example of it's going to work out that cleanly. And again, this is also kind of an outdated example, but keep this in mind. The RotoViz stack analysis tool is down, so forgive me on this one. In 2022, the best handcuff hit was Jamal Williams. In 2022, he scored like 18 touchdowns or whatever. He produced a 13.5% win rate by himself, and you had a 65% chance of making the playoffs by hitting on Jamal Williams that season as a late-round sleeper. Nick Chubb was the running back that was selected immediately ahead of DeAndre Swift that year. If instead you took his own handcuff, Kareem Hunt, it actually lowered your win rate. You took Jamal Williams instead of Kareem Hunt, then you had DeAndre Swift's handcuff, who went immediately after you, making yourself right twice, and your win rate jumped 6%, 56% playoff rate to 76%. So again, in practice, it plays itself out that if it works out for you, you're probably going to win your league. An 8.3% chance of winning your league is a uphill battle. It's not easy to win a fantasy football league. So when you have the opportunity to make yourself right twice on just a couple of consolidated bets, it makes your life easier.
It's about taking a stance. It's about making yourself right twice, like Corey said. And I would much rather put myself in a position where my team is undeniably the best in the league because I hit on someone else's handcuff than, I can get by for a few weeks because I drafted my own.
Not to mention, you can sell that guy back to the other person too. Like in trading negotiations, like people will, like last year, I'm sure a lot of you guys ripped off Christian McCaffrey managers for Jordan Mason.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I can speak to it myself. In our listener league last year, I was able to get Jordan Mason off waivers, shipped him to the Christian McCaffrey team for Joe Mixon straight up.
Yeah, no, people will panic when their starting running back goes down, especially if they're 1-2 or 1-3 or 0-3 at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, exactly. The way you think about it too is you're taking your stance on someone else's backfield, still littering yourself with the upside shot. If you handcuff your own player, just think of it as you're allocating 2 spots on your team, double the amount of roster spots on your team to 1 likelihood.
Yeah, and again, the specific one that I disagree with this year is Charbonnet and Walker, because Charbonnet is an 8th, 9th round pick. If Charbonnet was a 14th round pick and you said, hey, I'm going to hold Charbonnet all year because Walker is going to probably go down at some point, and that's kind of the case with like Bijan and Algier. Like Algier goes so late that if you really wanted to hold Algier all season, I wouldn't blame you too much. But it's like you said, when you're allocating high-end draft capital to both players.
Yeah, I don't care if you draft Will Shipley because you have Saquon Barkley in round 15. Go nuts. It's more so when we're drafting a running back in like round 2 or 3 or 4, and then drafting his backup directly round 8, 9, or 10.
Yeah, Montgomery to Gibbs and Charbonnet to Walker are the 2 that I would disagree with the most because their handcuffs are really expensive. That's basically the way I look at it. So tip number 8, And we'll see how people react to that handcuff one because people are real passionate about it. Tip
People
number 8
love
is
it.
chasing runs. And this is regardless of position, but we talk about it usually in the context of running back a lot, where let's say you're picking 110 and you start your draft with Nico Collins and BTJ because they're the best 2 players on your board. But before your 3rd round pick, you were thinking that Amarian Hampton or Walker, Breece Hall, some of those guys would fall to you, and they just all fly off the board. All of the running backs are gone by the time you get back to your pick. The mistake would be chasing that run and going, I need to take Alvin Kamara here at 310 because if I don't get a running back, I'm going to be locked out of the position. A run usually means that you're going to get a sliding value at a different position.
Exactly. And you know how you prepare for this, Corey? You learn about your league mates. You understand their philosophies. If you know that you're in a running back heavy room, maybe don't put yourself in a position where you need a running back in round 3. Maybe instead you take a balanced approach. You grab one running back. You know they're going to chase running back up the board, and then you leave yourself with a value in the 3rd round at wide receiver. Let's just say hypothetically, everybody, like we're talking about, Breece Hall, Trevion Henderson, Kenneth Walker, like all those running backs, the top 17 running backs in fantasy, go off the board prior to your late 3rd round pick. Say you're picking at the 111. Cool. Well, that means at that point, maybe a Marvin Harrison Jr. fell. Maybe an elite quarterback fell. Maybe plenty of value fell at the other position. So if you know inherently your league mates might value running back specifically like that is what we tend to see overvalued. At that point, at the 111, 202 turn, you take Brian Thomas Jr. plus Ashton Genty to secure yourself.
Yeah, instead of putting yourself in that position. And chasing runs also applies a lot to tight end and quarterback because a lot of people will just immediately start drafting their tight end and quarterback because they already have their 2 running backs, their 2 wide receivers, and their 1 flex or whatever. So they're like, okay, well, I spent 5 picks, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and 1 flex. Now it's time to draft my quarterback. It's like, well, you don't actually need to do that if you're taking the 8th quarterback in ADP when he doesn't project that much different from the 14th quarterback in ADP who could be available 5 rounds later.
Again, the correct way to handle it, you have to pre-plan ahead, but you also have to be able to adapt on the fly. Because like I said, maybe you didn't know your league mates would take 12 running backs in a row. Well, at that point, this is why we teach you the 0 running back strategy. This is why we teach you to have all these strategies on your tool belt because you never know when you have to whip it out.
Yeah, exactly. You never know when you have to whip it out is probably one of the best things that we've said in a video before. Tip number 9, and this is a bonus tip because if your league doesn't have kickers and defenses, this wouldn't apply to you.
Yeah.
Before the last 2 rounds of your draft, that's when you draft your kicker and defense. Let's just put it that way. It is very brief. The variance of kicker and variance of defense and the ease of streaming these positions means that you're going to pick one up every single week. Kickers, you target high over-unders and good offensive game environments.
One caveat I will have is if you can get a positional advantage at kicker, there's only about a few this year, and you want to take it in the 3rd last round because everybody let them fall to you there. I would rather that than taking maybe the 9th best kicker in the 2nd best or in the 2nd last round. That would be the only thing. I actually did that in the Flock League last year when I was able to get Brandon Aubrey. If you can get the best singular kicker projection in the 3rd last round, I'm cool with it, but agree with you. Aside from that, if you're getting replacement level options, you don't even have to take them in your draft if you don't want to.
Yeah, and both of us, we didn't draft kickers or defenses, and we just we're holding handcuff running backs and backup wide receivers instead. With defenses, I mean, like I said, kickers, all you're doing is targeting good kickers, high over-unders, good offensive game environments, maybe conservative coaches who will kick field goals a lot as well. With defenses, you're just picking on bad quarterbacks. Like, go look at who the Saints are playing that week. Go look at who the Jets are playing that week. Like, you just target bad turnover-prone quarterbacks, and that's what makes those the most replaceable position in fantasy football because any defense, even like the Bengals defense, can be a good streamer against Tyler Shuck and the New Orleans Saints. It is nice to have Brandon Aubrey. It's nice to have the Denver Broncos defense for sure. But if you're diligent and you're a committed fantasy manager, it's very easy to stream that off of the waiver wire. And who knows, maybe the one that you pick in the last round, like for me last year, I picked my kicker in the very last round of the Flock League. Kaimi Fairbairn became a positional advantage for me.
Well, exactly, right? Like I would say if you're going to take the best of the best, the 3rd last round is the earliest that I can possibly see it. And that's not because I'm taking kicker 5 off the board. I would need a Brandon Aubrey type to be able to make that type of commitment because like you said, there's so much volatility week to week. It's all matchup dependent. It's all game environment dependent. And I mean, coaching tendencies dependent, like you said.
Yeah, and then this other one is also league format specific because if you don't have an IR spot, then this wouldn't apply to you. But don't be afraid to stash players during the draft for your IR spot because A, you get an extra bench spot because you have an IR spot, and B, it might give you a nice late season upside, late season push if you guys draft like us with the assumption that your team's probably going to be better in the money weeks than it is at the beginning of the season. I, for example, drafted Brandon Ayuk in the Flock League. And the reason I drafted him is because I know I can just throw him in my IR spot, pick up another player off of waivers, and feel very comfortable on my merry way. Does Brandon Ayuk in the 9th round or wherever you have to draft him seem like the best pick in the world? No, but I already had 5 receivers on my roster at that point. So I was like, I'm comfortable taking Brandon Ayuk at this point. I'm comfortable taking Chris Godwin at that point, or Joe Mixon at that point. Or if you can put suspended players in your roster spots, maybe it's Judkins, maybe it's Rice, maybe it's Jordan Addison, and you're going to stash those players for the money weeks, and you're just going to throw them into your IR spot and then pick up a backup running back or something in the meantime.
Well, it goes back to what we were saying earlier, structural drafting, archetypal drafting. If you litter yourself with a ton of upside on your bench and you drafted, secure players in your lineup, you're basically banking on the fact that if anybody on my bench is able to usurp somebody in my current lineup, that usually means that my team is in a really, really good situation.
Yeah, and guys like Godwin and Mixon and Ayuk and stuff, if they're healthy, they probably would be starters. They would be drafted as starters. They'd be going in the first 5-6 rounds of fantasy. So that's why you're kind of taking that discount, taking the extra bench spot, going to continue working the waiver wire and so on. So again, that was 10 mistakes that your Buffoon league mates are probably going to make, but we don't want you guys to make. So definitely let us know what you thought down below. Tell us how much handcuffing is the best strategy ever, because I know it's coming. Just let us know in the comments down below. And of course, if you guys want all of our strategy stuff, all of our rankings, our draft ready cheat sheet that you can use directly on your computer while you're drafting, or you can print it off and bring it to your draft, head on over to flockfantasy.com, get the season pass, sign up using the promo code FSE. You'll get it for $34. You'll get our draft guide, which is very spreadsheet oriented, very data oriented. You'll also get the Domain Guys draft guide, which is specific draft strategy around, if you have the 10th pick on ESPN or if you have the 4th pick on Sleeper, their draft guide's very good for that. And then the Land Guys also have the superlatives, the breakouts, the My Guys, the sleepers, all that kind of stuff. So we have 3 different draft guides for you. $34 is the price tag for it. And you get August through January access to the site for in-season rankings, trade calculator, my team's feature, weekly rankings, everything that you guys could possibly need. Check that out. That'll be linked down below in the pinned comment. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.